Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Reliability Gang podcast back at HQ. Sorry about this, Will. I'm completely out of whack this morning. It's taken me about an hour to get the podcast to yes.
It's fine. You've just brought all the equipment back from America.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm completely lost right now. We've got everything set up. We're calm, we're good. But wow, reliability. Will has just taught an ARP again.
We're doing a lot of training in asset reliability. It's good though. It's good because this particular one we've just done this week, you know, the feedback from the guys was like, how have I gotten through my engineering career so far without knowing this stuff?
Mind blown, the guys. And that's what's really rewarding, though, isn't it, mate?
Yeah.
But not even that. Every time we go through it again, we remind ourselves of the value, the core things, what we're doing. And it's almost like a refresher for us as well when every time we go through that. So obviously, we're really reliably amped up. Will's done a whole ARP last week. He's probably been dreaming about ARP.
Apparently, Gia said last night I was talking about it in my sleep.
Yeah.
She was like, is that all you think about in your sleep? I was like, look, I don't choose. I was like, oh, dear.
What we think about in the day and sleep, eat, sleep, drink, repeat, reliability.
We should get T-shirts made with that on there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But anyway, like I said, I've been kind of an accelerator as well. Just a lot of reliability talk about the future, lots of different things. And I think today's podcast, we just got it in our brains, and I think we need somewhere to release it out. So what we want to talk about today is probably the most important stage with any reliability journey, which is the value. What do we get out of this? What is the output of what we're doing? Opposed to, what are the strategies we need to implement? Okay, great to have mean time before failure. Great to have mean time to failure. Great to have all that metrics. But half the time, the metrics don't matter because we don't have enough data to even model it. And it's like we've got all these great techniques and all these acronyms for all these great things. But if we don't understand the real core value of what are we actually going to get out of this process, instead of how much money are we actually going to save the business and how are we going to actually get there? Because there's going to be a lot of different areas where that saving is actually going to impact.
Yep. It's really important that when any organisation that maybe isn't got a reliability focus and is looking to go and start an initiative or a programme, even before we start doing the training bits, we need to understand that we're ultimately going to probably be changing the way that the business operates. Potentially, we might be changing the ways that certain people do their jobs. We could be changing a lot of things in the business to change the way we do things because we don't want to do things always the same way. We want to change and so that we can become more reliable. Well, in order for us to make those decisions and to get the senior leadership on board, we need to be able to explain to them what the value of doing a reliability initiative is. How is this going to benefit the business? And there's a few really important things that we have to understand when we go in and facilitate reliability, and that the guys on site need to understand in order to make sure that their efforts work towards that.
Yeah. Ironically, last Friday, I was at one of these business case review meetings where we had a lot of the people from production, operations, engineering together, and we was having that one conversation that we just talked about what is the value of reliability, what we do in here. And before we actually start anything, we need to have a conversation and have a chat. And there needs to be also within that kind of business case review, also in a level of awareness that all of the guys understand that all of you are very important to this. This is not just engineering's back.
Reliability is everyone's responsibility.
Everybody's responsibility. And I think when I had that conversation with the guys, they was like, oh, right. Because I feel they kind of were, this is just going to be a meeting that I need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. They didn't really comprehend until after the meeting that this is something they're going to be a part of. And they all very much want to be a part of it, because when we explained kind of like how each division is so responsible and why the KPIs for reliability need to be across the board, they all started to really kind of be interested in that as well. Because even when it comes down to operations, well, if the machines are running more reliably, well, the operations are going to be less impacted, So this guy, as soon as I said that, his ears perked up. What can I improve? He's like, I'm interested. I'm interested. Same as health and safety. Mm-hmm. They're talking about things of making sure the machinery is a lot safer than what it could be down to the fact we can do precision maintenance. That perked his ears up. He's like, okay, that interests me.
They all work together because, like you say, if maintenance is done and the machines are cared for and they are more reliable, they're available to operations. And if operations run them all within their parameters and they don't try and run them too hard, they're not going to fail as regularly. And so So it's everyone's responsibility to support with the reliability initiative. And that review that you were doing with the guys is that great example of, right, business case review. How can doing a reliability initiative improve our business goals? So we have to understand this first stage of value. What are the business's goals? You know, is it to produce X amount of material or X product? Is it to have, like an airline, one we use in ARP training, is as many safe landings as possible?
Yeah, that is a metric.
One of their metrics.
Yeah.
So when we understand what the business is trying to achieve, what the business's goals are, whether that's, you know, to make as many, you know, food items as possible with high quality, etc., we can then understand how a reliability initiative can support in achieving those business goals. Because ultimately we have shareholders, owners, high leadership people within the business, global potentially.
And that's the thing, Will, this is it. Because obviously I'm talking to these guys, but these guys have a job to convince the people that hold the money that this is a good bet.
Yeah.
And this is what I said to them, look, this is where measurement is key, because everybody in that room wants better reliability. But they still need resource to be able to improve that because it costs money.
Yep.
Right? They also need to be able to go apply for this money to get a return on investment with it. So when anyone goes applies for anything, and even us personally, say for example, we went to go and invest in something, what are you going to want to know when you invest?
Return.
Well, you want to know what you're buying. You want to know when the return is, and you want it to be pretty quick.
Yep.
Of course you do. Don't get me wrong. A lot of investments that personal people do are for the long game, and that there is that for a reason. But when it comes down to reliability and people giving money out, they want that return pretty damn quick. And this is a part of the problem as well sometimes. So when we're looking at measurements and we're looking at what the client's actually measuring, this is where OEE is just so important, because the thing is, what we do is CM, and it's always been very difficult for us because we, whenever measuring the other metrics, was that when we do find a defect or a problem and, you know, the customer listens, they take that out, new one goes in, we verify it with the data. Brilliant. Okay, we've avoided a cost there.
Yep.
But it's still an avoided cost. It doesn't actually add any money to the balance sheet because it didn't happen. And this is really difficult to grasp, okay? Obviously, we don't want it to happen because the money they would have spent would have been higher. So effectively, they haven't spent what a potential could have been.
It's still what if though, innit?
What if? It's still a magical thing, right? And this is where we need to be able to convert metrics into tangible things, okay? So when I spoke to these particular customers as well, and I asked, what are you measuring? You know, are you measuring OEE effectively? And, you know, they're not. They're measuring certain parts of it. So availability is something they are measuring, but not really measuring kind of performance because they don't know how, because the product they make is slightly different to a tangible thing that outputs. And quality is obviously wastage is going to be really key for them. But quality, they're not really making a product. They're taking chemicals and neutralizing them. So there may be a quality way you can measure that some way, but it's a little bit more complex to how you do a general thing. But when I started talking to them about how we can incorporate OEE with these three kind of metrics, I said, once we can measure that now, and we can measure the difference between X amount in a year, you can actually say, look, this is the return on investment that we've made.
And you need to be able to have at least some level of metrics before you could, as you're going through this value stage, because you need to be able to present to the senior members of the business, potentially shareholders and owners, and saying that, look, we understand what the value of doing a reliability initiative is. So we've done our business process review. These are the business goals. These are some of the things that we're measuring already, maybe OEE, maybe losses, etc. If we were to do a reliability initiative, we could aim to try and improve these targets, which we know are so important to delivering the business goals.
100%.
And if you don't have anything like those in place, now is the stage within the value part to start looking at, right, can we measure a couple of these?
Vital, Will, because the problem is, if someone starts this process now, we don't get the right metrics now, we can't capture the impact that we've done.
You're just going to struggle to get senior buy-in because they're not going to understand, well, how does this benefit us? You can't just go in there and go, look, we're going to make X more widgets if we do reliability. But how do we measure that that's successful? How do we measure that the program is achieving its goals?
How does that convert into pound, dollar sign? Ultimately, that's the end goal.
And then we don't need to
Everyone
have
needs to
lots of
understand.
measures. We're not looking to, like, as the business develops and grows, like, depending on where you are within your reliability journey, you may have lots of KPIs that are already being measured. You may have none. All we're looking for initially in the value stage is to try and establish 5 key KPIs and measures, OEE, whatever is important to the business, to start using as a benchmark as we start going through the process.
Yes, 100%. And ultimately, I think OEE is always going to be the end goal. This is what people have to focus
It's a very important KPI.
It's so important because it incorporates the 3 things that are actually going to actually make you more money. And that's how much time you're running with availability, how quick you're making the product, performance, how is that line performing? But also it has great counteractive measures like quality. So how many defects are made? Because if you increase your performance, but you make more defects, it's going to affect your quality. So it's not just about saying, oh, how can we make the lines run quicker?
Yep.
A lot of factories that we've been to have said, right, okay, we're going to get production right. We need to get more out of the machines. And this is a perfect example, right? So they're right. Well, how do you do that? Well, what you can do is increase your performance. It means you can make more, okay? You're still available, but you're making more in that available time. Problem is, though, by taking the machine up by another 20%, right? Oh, no, machine's failed now. So then in the future, the availability gets smacked massively from you trying to alter the performance and not do it in the correct way. So the idea is being able to get the maximum out of all 3, right? But make sure you're not compensating on the other. So if you're just measuring availability, then you might not be making a massive amount in the day. You might be running all day, but you might be able to make 50% more on what you're doing. So all 3 are so important to measure, because if you can get that right, that's the single measurement that you will be able to use to measure your effectiveness of how you can make product. Simple as that.
So you're at a position now within this value stage where you understand really well what the business's drivers are, what their reviews are. You understand now the key importance of measuring some important targets that we can aim for. We can then demonstrate to the business how, if we do reliability initiative, they are going to improve. Once you're sort of at that stage, it's then a case about assessing where you are at now. And this is what we like to do as a bit of a reliability audit. We need to understand where the business is at now. This will then lead into the asset strategy.
And I like this as well, because a lot of people are at different places, and it's odd as well for me and Will to go into different places. It's quite interesting, actually, because we're like, oh, they've done loads of that, but they've done none of this. And there's another place would have a really good CMMS kind of setup, but they're not really got the PMs in there to generate the, do you know what I mean? So you get this kind of mixture, and it's quite interesting because no place is the same. This is something that me and Will have actually kind of, really realised. And where them gaps are is like, right, here's where you can put a little low-hanging fruit. You can put a bit of effort in to really maximise your processes, because you may have some things already in place. It's just about refinement. In some areas, there's complete refits, which does take time, So
that process can be done in a few different ways. We can do it independently as part of the engineering team or the operations team, or we can do it collectively, or sometimes we do it as a survey to try understand sometimes the perception part, because it's not always about what is actually there. We want to also understand what is the general perception amongst the entire business and the factory.
And as well, though, is that also when we did that a couple of places, people were a bit like, what's this?
People start to get interested.
This questionnaire, and it's like, oh, just a few honest questions, aren't asked them honestly, and it does start to get people a little bit, oh, okay,
what's going on
here? And that's the accountability bit, right? Because when you're looking at reliability, everyone's accountable. When you've got such a wide spectrum, though, and a few people are not pulling their weight in one area, it's very difficult to round all your people up from different departments to get them online with the same things and the same actions. So this is really interesting. When we did give that out, everybody from different departments was like, okay, what's going on here? But eventually it ties everyone together.
And it's also probably around this point as well, as you're doing the reliability audit, you're probably starting to become more aware of what we might consider as roadblocks or challenges you may have. And that could be financial. You might be in an organization that just isn't going to have a lot of money available. You might not have a lot of resource. But what that shouldn't do is it shouldn't stop the reliability program having an opportunity, because there's so much we can achieve through a reliability initiative that doesn't actually cost a lot of money at all.
It doesn't. And that's the thing. Like, when we talk about reliability, it's actually very efficient, because what we're trying to do is use strategy quickly to get to the points where the business is not working. And this is where a lot of people struggle. A lot of people want to buy things that are tangible. They can, oh, okay, I've got a piece of equipment. I've got this, I've got that, I've got people. But that's not necessarily where people should be spending money. The only problem is it's a psychological thing, because a lot of people, when they spend something, they want to see something for it, okay? But they don't measure the actual value or the output out of that thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing is with reliability is it's a psychological element of saying, how do I lean into the strategy of how my business, is it being effective? How is it being effective? How is it running? Then saying, where areas can I be aware of and identify? And that's what reliability does. It puts a big spotlight on the areas that are weak. But then not only that, you can then prioritize them areas and strategize how you get them to be completely efficient and effective.
Yep.
And when you get to that the quickest time, the cost of actually spending on that is not actually a huge amount. But the output, though, is absolutely astronomical.
A lot of the time, like generally speaking, when we do a lot of asset reliability training or we communicate and talk to a lot of the customers, and they talk, obviously we go in doing condition monitoring a lot of the time, and they're talking about issues like, oh, we've just had to change all these vacuum hubs and everything like that.
I've done it all out.
And
maintenance as well. God.
And what you end up finding is in a lot of places, most places, maintenance strategies or the tasks that they are doing or think that they're doing to try and maintain their equipment is not actually based on any sound evidence or detailed strategy. It is generally based on, we're doing that because OEM told us to, or we're doing it because it's always been that way, or maybe they had a failure in the past and they feel like this PM is to try prevent that.
Yeah, and it's been done from a point of view of, oh, this may be good.
Yeah,
it's not being thought through.
No,
they haven't looked at failure mode. They've not looked at failure mode analysis of how something can potentially fail, and they've not built their maintenance plan on the failures.
Yes. And this is why, as well, so many organisations now are falling into that trap of buying lots of sensors,
blanket,
because they still haven't understood their failure mode. So, a reliability, without us getting too much into asset strategy, like this value stage is so key for any organisation that recognises that they need to potentially improve their performance. They need to try and reduce their unplanned losses. That there is going to be required change within the business. We're going to have to change the maintenance strategies. We're going to have to change and maybe remove PMs. We might have to change what operators are doing. All this stuff requires the support from the senior leadership and people within the business. And our jobs as reliability engineers really is to be able to explain that.
And I agree, Will. Like the senior leadership need to understand reliability, because this is the thing as well when it comes down to the guys that do make the decisions. And this is a perfect example of one of the customers that we've been working on, and we're on a really good reliability journey with this customer. They come on the ARP last week, and I've known this guy for nearly 10 years. Like I've been in condition monitoring this place, even my previous place, and now obviously for us, and now we're moving into reliability. It's been a journey, you know, but like he's great. He's brilliant. He understands failure mode. He understands strategy. He doesn't want to do things for the sake of it. He wants to make sure he has a good reason what he's doing and why he's doing it in that approach. And he's done the ARPs, come onto us. We've done a CM strategy there, and he's really kind of leaned into the strategy side, because his plant is really difficult, Will. It's not one that runs 24/7. It's very process driven. He's got lots of stop-start stuff. And the reality is a lot of his machines don't actually run for a long time, because the type of product they make isn't actually based around kind of availability, because it's such a niche product. But it's still incredibly needs to be reliable. It needs it's so critical, because there's only certain machines can make certain products. So it's kind of a weird conundrum where it doesn't run all the time, but when it needs to run, it needs to run.
Yeah.
You know, he's been sold from the very top of the organization a strategy that just looks at putting a sensor on everything. So they don't understand A, the plant that they're looking at, and B, their business, because a lot of plants that they've got in Europe run exactly the same way, right? This particular solution was looking at putting a sensor on everything. When I looked at it in terms of how it was going to run, it was only going to capture one reading per day. And some of these assets, like, will run once a week.
Yep. We have to be very strategic in our data.
Huge amount there. Everything, some stuff needs to be run up. It's difficult. And, you know, we do that by a strategy that we've created. But I've figured out that 80% of the assets,
they wouldn't collect anything. Wasn't it going to be like thousands of pounds?
And it was going to be nearly 5-6 times that we charge for handheld VA. It's 5-6 times, and they were going to get 80% less data. And you know,
that comes from, though, like you say, the senior leadership not understand it.
And it's not their fault. They just haven't had that conversation about.
We talk about this quite regularly, and it's part of the reason why, you know, when people go, well, why'd you do the podcast?
Well, this
is why we just podcast, because people don't understand.
We're so
and it's not their fault either, though, is it? Because it goes back to training, doesn't it?
We're just like, we want to talk to them people because we know if we have a conversation, you're going to get it. And we don't want you to go down the road with all of your clients doing this. And you're going to 4 or 5 years down the road, realize that it didn't work. The strategy goes back to square one. And all of that money you've spent hasn't actually added any value whatsoever to your program. And this is why I'm passionate about it. And this is why I'm just so, like, you know, we got to make sure that the right people are understanding the real concepts of why, you know what I mean? Then doing the right technique to be able to get to that model. Because what I don't like is companies almost putting the wool over people's eyes, because whoever went in there to sell this would have known that. Because, well, I hope they would have asked the questions. And there's two things. They would have asked the questions because they should have done, because that's what we're responsible to do when we sell technology that's more complicated than what is understood from the consumer.
Yeah.
Right? That is our responsibility. Okay? If you're buying something technical, whoever sells that product has a responsibility to explain where the value is and how that tech can be used. There's that. Or they've not understood it can't, which is even worse. So I don't even know, like...
But going back to bring it back into this value stage, it's so important.
It's an example for value.
It's massively, because it's so important that we start to... This first stage of the reliability initiative is about understanding what the value of reliability is. And it's reliability, not condition monitoring. And condition monitoring is a subset of reliability.
Entities.
Separate thing. Condition monitoring is just us, from a reliability perspective, saying we've reviewed the asset, we've reviewed the failure modes, and based on the failure modes, we feel that failure mode can be detected through an on-condition task, vibration analysis, oil sampling, inspection, whatever.
The way that we do condition monitoring is different, though. It's not just, oh, here's a problem. When we find something, we're like, this needs to be looked at. Here's the next part. We almost use it as a tool to find the problems in the plant. Because if you find a few problems in the plant, there's a reason why these things are happening.
Yep.
And then we use that to almost use it to try to then eliminate the defects once we've found why the problems are happening. Right?
And reliability.
A lot of the failures, mate.
Most of the failures are preventable if we get good reliability. Like,
this is crazy. Like 80% of your stuff that actually fails could be probably prevented with good proactive sound at the start, looking at the reliable
good design, buying the right equipment.
But we can't be there because we're always behind that curve initially, and they're always chasing it, and we can't get there. It's like,
this is ultimately the whole purpose of this value stage, which is to understand. We understand very well all these things, and when we do the ARP training, we teach the engineers that are on there what is the value of the program, so that they have the tools and the knowledge to go away, speak to their senior leadership team, so that they can be educated. And it may make people aware that, oh, maybe I don't have all the information here, and we may be able to go in and do some more training. But once people have the tools, the knowledge, and they understand what actually reliability means, because this is most of the problem is most people don't really understand what reliability means and what is encompassed. Everyone I teach ARP, he goes, wow, I didn't realize that it encompassed all of this.
I know, it's crazy.
So once people understand that, they can then build the business case to go to the business. And this customer you were talking about earlier with all the sensors is a great example, which George, you won't mind me saying, was on ARP last week. He's now able to very easily demonstrate and explain to the business why reliability is going to achieve the business goals, not putting sensors on everything.
100%. And do you know what? He's now on a mission because he understands this, and he doesn't want the group to go down the route that's going to lead.
That's going to add no value and cost a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I'd say it's going to add no value. There may be the opportunity that there is value to put wireless sensors or remote monitoring on it, but we should only go down that road and spend that money once we've understood why it's going to benefit the business, why we need to increase our frequency of measurement, why that helps us detect the failure mode. And in order to do that, you need to do the failure mode analysis, you need to do the RCM, and in order to do that, you need to have the time and you need to have the training, and in order to get the time and the training, you need to have people on board. You need to have the senior leadership understanding what you're trying to achieve, and we need to have everyone working together, because everyone's responsible for reliability.
And not even that, it's got to be a team. You have to know how to round your people up for this.
Yep.
Right? It is, you have to be able to understand how to communicate. You've got to be able to understand how to, and this is our job initially, to spark the interest within the organization. We can't alone, from an external perspective, change the reliability in any internal company. We can't. And anyone that says they can, it's a lie. It needs to be done inside the organization. What we can do, though, and what we're very good at, is creating a spark,
Bringing the passion and the energy.
Passion and energy in, identifying the value for what the business can get out of it if they do it properly. And then from inside, we almost light the fire inside. We're creating the fire. We're creating the fire, right? And when the fire's lit, right, we can then step back a little bit, and then we have to just keep topping it up with a bit of wood, topping up with that, topping up with the knowledge or whatever. But the fire still needs to be kept alive within the organization, because if it's put out and we come back again, we start the fire again. It's a great analogy, it's a great metaphor, and it takes us ages, but we get it going again. We leave, and then if you don't carry on with the process, it will go out again, and you won't get anywhere. And it's just a huge amount of effort. And this is where reliability and momentum is so important. Once you know what you need to know, what you need to do, there needs to be a plan to be able to get there. And it needs to be over-resourced, Will. It needs to be. And companies, their problem is, are not prepared or willing to spend the extra amount of money in a short period of time, but it's so vital to the success.
Well, organizations, that they need to assess, this goes back to, and we do this as part of the value stage at ARPL, which is understanding the cost benefits of return on investment and putting resource or financial money into the pot. And what organizations need to understand is, within that value stage, is what money or resources is potentially required. If you've got team members that are able to deliver and give resource and time to it, then that's good. But ideally, we'd like to have someone focused as the reliability engineer in order to do that. And so that does cost time, and we're going to have to maybe bring someone in to do it or train somebody. And we need to understand, though, what the benefit and the return on that person and that training is going to have on the business. Businesses are all too keen to go and spend thousands and thousands on sensors, but won't necessarily invest in time and people.
Exactly what we said before about buying something that's tangible in their heads, that's physical.
Yes.
That's a psychological element of it.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to also come back to the point, we need to start looking not about what physically we're getting, the value-wise of what the business is receiving.
The thing is, we talk about it in asset reliability training as well, and people fear the idea of we do it as part of the skills and training assessment, which falls under the value and culture change stages. But in that part, we talk about, what happens if we train people and they leave?
Yeah.
But what happens if we don't train people?
So if we don't train people, then that awareness bit that we give in terms of getting the people on board straight away, ARP, or getting the guys into that will be the most valuable thing you'll do.
Yeah.
Because when you get them thinking psychologically, this makes sense, your pull in terms of reliability tenfold.
Yeah.
Is getting people the awareness first. It's the quickest, most easiest way to get people on their reliability journey. ARP gives a framework to be able to do it.
Yep.
And every person that I've seen go on that course has come out of that course with a whole new, they've like stepped into a new world. That's how impactful it is. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's our mission, the Training Academy, to teach people this first of all. And when they get it and understand it, they're going to be pushing it within their own organizations because they understand it.
Yep.
So that's where the awareness is so vital and so important as well.
Yeah, because once we have the awareness, we can then go to the people within the business and go, right, we want to start a reliability initiative, and this is why.
Yep. So if you're interested in ARP, come and have a chat with us. I don't think there's no one in the UK that going to teach it more passionately than the reliability gang. So guys, thank you for tuning in. It's been a great one. Like loads to talk about, and we're going to start to amp this up now a little bit now that we're back in business.
Let's do it.